Welcome to the Around the NFL podcast streaming show presented by SiriusXM. My name is Dan Hanzus, joined in a room filled with heroes, Marc Sessler, Chris Wesseling, and Gregg Rosenthal. What is up, boys?
Hey, Dan.
Hey. Let's get into it. Like, what we're hearing.
We're hearing a lot of things.
What are we hearing?
I mean, it's that time you can feel the regular season coming down on us like an airplane screaming out of the sky, and it's coming straight for the house we're all sitting in.
We're hearing,
there's no running.
1,000 people are going to lose their jobs in the NFL this week. That's a lot.
How's that?
Over that.
Greg, way to put it in perspective. Big show coming up. Check this out. Cut down week stories, memories with Charlie Casserly, a guy that's been all up and down the ladder from general manager to what, Wes?
Ball boy,
and the Turk, the guy that lets you know to turn in your playbook. So we're going to talk to Charlie. We'll get into Andrew Luck's retirement, preseason takeaways, and then every year, right when the season kicks off, we go around the NFL. So we'll share some takes on the NFC, and that seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. This feels like a good show.
Pretty solid.
All right, so let's get right to it. Football talk time. Hey, big week on the NFL calendar. We have the end of the preseason schedule, thankfully. And then right after that, teams need to make the tough decisions to get down to their final 53. So for our show today, we're just going to focus on this week on the NFL calendar. We got Charlie Casserly, a former Super Bowl winning general manager, Greg. Did you know that?
And Minnetonka Regional graduate, or at least worker.
Don't bury the lead.
Like me.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yes.
Go Falcons.
That as well. But we're going to talk to Charlie. He has some really good stories from this time of year. He's a guy that has worked on all different levels around this time in the league calendar. But before we get to Charlie, I just wanted to go around the room and throw out, there's always surprise veteran names that end up getting cut right before week one. Mark, I'm going to start with you. Throw a name out there for us.
I will. It's not a good time of year. I don't celebrate when these people lose their jobs. Greg does.
Not what you told me off mic.
Greg does celebrate it, and I find that to be, that speaks to Greg's character.
Only me and Wes are clear.
Yeah, you guys are in the final. How about Rex Burkhead? Just because I feel like a month ago when we were wondering who might come and go, there were questions about Sony Michel and his health and the fact that he might be displaced by Damian Harris. You've got James White on the roster. And I know the Patriots like to have 8 running backs and a starlet jump in there occasionally and run for 180 yards on a Thursday night game, but maybe Rex Burkhead doesn't fit here this time around. Swinging for the fences. Am I swinging for the fences? I don't know if that Rex Burkhead is doing that. We'll see.
I mean, you should be picking that starlet up would really be swinging for the fences.
I mean, every other team's like, oh, you've got 2 running backs on the roster. It's a bloated lineup, but the Patriots apparently can do 6 or 7, and they all have games where they star.
Well, that's one where I could see him getting traded. I think someone would give up a late-round conditional pick for Burkhead, and I think that's true of Brian Hoyer on the Patriots since we're talking about
Throw it out
them.
there, Greg.
The Colts need a backup quarterback. There's a few other teams out there, the Jaguars perhaps. They're not going to give up much for him, but I don't think the Patriots feel like they need Brian Hoyer, and I could see him getting traded.
Interesting. Wes, throw one out there.
Well, I would stay on the trade topic, and maybe will the Pittsburgh Steelers keep 3 quarterbacks again? They've got Mason Rudolph and Josh Dobbs. Both look intriguing. Both look like they could help some other teams. And I wonder if Frank Reich looks at Nate Sudfeld now that the Eagles have Josh McCown and says, I worked with him in Philly. Bring him over to back up Jacoby Brissett.
I like that.
Good thought. I'll throw one straight cut out there. Carlos Hyde with the Chiefs. Damian Williams, I don't know if you guys happen to catch his Week 3 preseason action.
Looked pretty good.
A beautifully thrown ball by Patrick Mahomes on a wheel route. And then Williams showed just really impressive breakaway speed, taking it to the house. I wonder if that play could be a nail in the coffin for Carlos Hyde, a veteran who once upon a time seemed to be a 3-down bell cow type guy in San Francisco. It has not worked out for him. Will he have a home come Week 1? Greg, yes or no?
I don't think so. Not on that team. And they gave him $800,000 guaranteed. He'll probably get a job somewhere, but
he's not staying long in one place these days.
Yeah,
that's been a rough year for him.
Running backs on their second, third contracts, sometimes there's a reason for it. TJ Yeldon, I think, is someone that's going to get cut. Unless someone wanted to trade for LaShawn McCoy, I think the Bills would give him up because they don't really need him. But I don't really see a team being interested. And then here would be a bigger surprise. I wonder if C.J. Anderson is for sure going to make the Lions. That would be an upset. But they really like Ty Johnson, their rookie who's made a lot of noise. Anderson doesn't play any special teams. Kerryon Johnson's clearly their starter. That would be a surprise.
I wonder if Johnson is already thinking to himself, I miss the Rams.
C.J. Anderson.
Excuse me. I miss the Rams.
Also, Johnson.
How could he not?
The holes are not as big as they used to be. I have a big body. I need to get through a narrow space here in Detroit. I don't know if I can do it.
Get narrow.
I think the big news, I hope, as someone who likes NFL transactions and just the player movement, are going to be trades. I mean, I think when all these players get cut, and this will be Friday and Saturday, that to me is the most likely time to see Jadeveon Clowney get traded, to see Trent Williams get traded. Maybe there's a surprise wide receiver out there. You know, there's always these reports this time of the year like, ooh, watch out. There's a lot of people talking trade. And so far the last few years there have been some big ones before week 1. So maybe it's when the cuts happen, maybe it's earlier in the week, but I think we could have some spice.
Chiefs GM Brett Veach, during the preseason game last week, was talking about the process. If you have guys that you think you're going to cut, you might call a GM and say, here's 4 names.
Right.
Give me 2 that you're interested in. Let's see if we can work something out.
All right, good conversation, guys. Let us move on now. As promised, NFL Network analyst, former NFL GM, a man that's worked in the league in all different capacities. So who better to talk to right around cut-down time here on the NFL calendar than the great Charlie Casserly. Charlie, welcome to the Around the NFL podcast.
Hey, great to be with you guys. First time on Team Cam. This is historic.
This is better. We've had Charlie in the studio. Nothing beats Charlie in the studio. We did a phoner with Charlie, which is great because Charlie's just a fountain of knowledge of the NFL. But to be able to see Charlie, you see, that's important.
It's a human experience that I want again and again.
So, Charlie, you have been all over the map in terms of duties with the team. Of course, as I mentioned, as a GM, but you cut your teeth as the Turk at one point in your career. You want to tell us a little bit about that, the beginning of your career, and what that role was like, because it does not seem fun.
No. So I go to the Redskins. I'm 28 years old. I'm an intern, right? I'm the only intern in training camp in 1977 to date myself. So, what are my duties? Well, you answer the camp phone. Well, 7 o'clock to midnight. Okay, we answer the camp phone. You're going to be the guy who cuts the players. Now, I knew what a Turk meant. So the lowest guy on the totem pole got to be the Turk, see? Cut the players. So I'm sitting in there the first day in the office, and some guy comes in and wants to see Coach Allen. So I'm like in charge at the moment. There's nobody. I says, well, what's your name? It was Larry Brown, the former MVP of the NFL. He's retiring. So, okay, so we blow that one all right. But now, strategy. How do you cut a player? Now, back then, we had 120 guys in camp. Man, that's a lot of cuts, okay?
Oh, my goodness.
So now we're in 2 months, too. So the fellow in charge, I won't mention his name to protect the innocent here.
You can look it up, though.
Here's what you do. Well, maybe you can. Anyway, he says, here's a strategy. So he gives me the key. See, now I got the key to all the dorm rooms. He says, wake up bells at 7 o'clock. Knock on the door at 6:30. Go right in with the key, shake them, wake them up, tell them, bring your playbook downstairs, and then get out of the room. He says, the most defenseless position of a person is when they're laying in bed when you wake them up. That was the strategy on how we cut him.
What? I mean, that sounds like a great strategy for like a sociopath.
That's
like
a very
if you were trying to kill someone. But that's
like
terrible.
A very 1970s strategy to think.
Yes.
And you could catch somebody in a bad way when they're just waking up from a dream or something, Charlie. Did you ever catch a right hook?
I got the advantage. He's laying down and I'm running. So anyway, I cut everybody. Except in 2 situations. The final cut when they're cutting the veterans, I didn't get involved in that. However, this is in camp now, middle of camp. I'm rolling every morning. I'm cutting somebody, see? And they say, well, there's this one guy we don't want you to cut. It might be dangerous.
Oh,
he says, okay, dangerous. And remind me about a story when I was assistant GM here about being dangerous now.
I will.
So anyway, this guy's name was Jesse Freitas. He's playing in Canada, gets cut, signs with the Redskins. We're scrimmaging the Baltimore Colts at the time. George Allen says, hey, run the ball. He fakes a run, throws a 40-yard touchdown pass, goes running off the field like this. I did it. I did it. I did it.
Oh, no.
Hey, they had enough of the guy, see? So they were right. He was a problem. He refuses to leave camp. They call the police. Okay?
Oh, my gosh.
So in the meantime, we had just scrimmaged the Eagles. So he gets on the phone with Dick Vermeil. He says, that guy Jaworski you got, he stinks. I'm better than him. Vermeil wasn't interested. Okay? So now he calls Sam Retigliano. He's the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. We're playing on Monday night. This is Saturday morning. Hey, I got the game plan. Now, back then, they used to practice and play everybody game plans. I got the game plan. Bang. He's flying to Cleveland now. So finally, he agrees to leave. They get him in the car. I don't drive him. Somebody else drives him. He's in the back smoking a cigarette and chewing tobacco at the same time. Hey, that was the most controversial one that they didn't let me go.
That reminds me when they tried to fire me here.
Yeah. Jump ahead. Go ahead, Charlie.
So anyway, so jump ahead. Let's get this in perspective. This is probably about not quite 10 years later, right? Maybe 9 years later. See, now I'm assistant general manager. And so I'll do some cutting at this point in time, going to players and telling them that they're released. So we had this player. I can't name the name because this is too dangerous is the wrong word here. They said, hey, he's downstairs. Just warn. Dan Henning was one of the assistant coaches. He said, hey, listen, I want to just warn you here. What's that, coach? He says, he's got a gun downstairs. So I just wanted to tell you before you go down. What the hell? What am I going to do now?
He's got a gun in his locker?
Anyway.
He just had a gun sitting at the top shelf of his locker, Charlie?
I never saw the gun. I didn't ask any questions. So that was it.
Hey, Charlie, I got a question about things that may have changed over the last few decades. You know, in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have as many probably scrimmages with other teams. You played your starters more in the preseason. Maybe not every drill from practice is taped and reviewed by coaches later that night. How much is practice worth more now than it was back then, as opposed to the preseason games being worth more back then? As far as
games were worth more.
As far as cutting
games
players.
Were worth more. Well, games were worth more because you saw them more. But interesting, we had 120 guys in camp now, as opposed to, I guess it's 90 now. So we actually had a full-blown rookie scrimmage where we had a rookie team. So we got a good look at the rookies there in practice and the scrimmage. The whole first week they were in camp, it was only rookies. We did, back in 1977 when I came, George Allen, we scrimmaged the Eagles before we ever played a game, and then had 6 preseason games. With Gibbs right after that, we did scrimmage. We went and practiced with the Steelers twice during training camp. So we did some of those things. But you just had so much more of a body of work to evaluate them on. Because remember now, we practiced twice a day. We had these scrimmages, and we played them more in the games. You don't get that body of work now to evaluate these guys. There's a lot more guessing involved.
Charlie, you have to tell us a story about an airplane and a decision that was made that it was probably a tough one. An unusual one as well.
It's a big time now.
Yeah.
See, we're in the National Football League here now. We're not at Minnechaug High School there.
Oh, yeah.
Gregg Rosenthal,
Minnechaug Regional. Charlie
That's
coached
right.
at my school.
Wow.
That's right. And you were a student a few years after I coached there.
Yeah,
so here's the deal.
Like 20, but yeah.
We're going to have, count 20, 30, what's the difference? We're going to scrimmage the New England Patriots, see? And we trained in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. They trained outside of Foxborough. So we're playing in Foxborough. We got to take a plane from Harrisburg to Providence for the scrimmage. Now, normally we flew United Airlines, but the team got a deal with All-Star Airlines.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not getting on that plane.
I'm sure you heard of that one now. So, but in reality, they flew, I believe, the Toronto Blue Jays. They flew, I think, Boston College. So I mean, they flew some reputable people there. So we got, I said, how many seats we got? 90. That's great. We need 90 seats. See, for the rookie scrimmage, we got everybody to bring, coaches, etc. And so I call up the person in charge from All-Star Airlines. And I said, this is great. We got 90 seats. He says, no, you got 72. I said, I got the manifest there. It's 90 seats. He says, no, it's 72. I says, no, we're taking 90 people. He says, you can't. I said, why not? It's a weight limit. A weight limit we have? Now, man, we're in a big time now.
Sure.
So I says, we're taking 90. What's the weight limit? So he gives me this poundage now. So now I got to walk down to Joe Gibbs' future Hall of Fame football coach, already won one Super Bowl at that point in time, at least one. I says, Coach, we got a little problem here. He says, what's that? He says, we have a weight limit on the plane. He did not want to hear that now. He wasn't excited about that. So I don't even remember what the number is, so I can't give you a number. He says, what is it? I says, X. He says, he drops it by 1,000 pounds. So, okay. So now, here's our challenge, okay? Now, again, we're the big time, men. Everybody's got to weigh in. Now, we weigh the players in. So now we got to go weigh the bags in. Now we got to weigh the coaches in. Now, you know the coaches are all going to lie about their weight. Not this time. They're on the scale with somebody watching them. So now it's Thursday and we're scrimmaging on Saturday. I think you're getting the picture now.
Sure.
So we go up to the board and I got to write down all the weights. Well, the coaches are all coming. The equipment's coming. What's our weight? What's our tonnage on the players? Uh-oh, we're over Coach Gibbs' limit. Now we're under the big limit. So we're sitting there, we got the weights up for the players, and we're deciding who we're going to cut based on the weight to get on the plane.
Oh, my God.
That's the big time. But here's the rest of the story. See, we go to meet the plane. Now, the flight was perfect, okay? I want to say that. It was perfect, okay? Now, they were out of business the next year, but the flight was perfect.
The fact that we're talking to you right now, Charlie, tells us that everything worked out.
That's true. Yeah, but the next line tells you something here. So I don't know how this thing is going to go, right? So I go to the team photographer. I says, you're the last one on, and you take a picture, okay? Because if we go down, I want the picture of the last flight of the Washington Redskins somewhere to be found in the records, okay? So he takes the picture. Now we go on the plane, see? It's supposed to be a charter. Well, they had just taken a gambling crew to Atlantic City, flew in. So normally you have no alcohol on the planes, except after the game the guys got beer, okay? Now, and that was eliminated at one point by the time I finished. Guy comes down with the drink card, the old-fashioned drink card with the bottles of booze. I says, no, get that out of here. So we fly in, we have a perfect flight, we're on time. The Patriots run out of rookies. So the scrimmage ends early. So now we're sitting there. Oh, and one of the things was when we got off the plane, the guy says, we got to sit here, we can't take off till 7 o'clock tonight. I says, no, we're taking off at 5 o'clock. Nah, we've flown too many hours. We got to take a break. We can't leave till 7. I go, oh, my God. Okay, now I got to tell Gibbs another wonderful story here. See, he ain't happy about that one. The scrimmage ends early, so we're sitting around for like 3 hours. So Gibbs says, let's get the buses, at least get there. Now we get there on the plane. It's 6:45. The guy walks down to me, and he says, pilot says, we're taking off early. I says, hey, at least we got 15 minutes out of this thing anyway. It's 7 o'clock. We don't move. It's 5 after 7. We don't move. So I go up to the pilot on the plane. I says, why aren't we moving? He said, the guy's overcharging me for gas.
Oh, my
God.
You get this plane the heck out of here right now. He took off. I don't know if we had enough gas or not, but we made it.
Charlie Casserly.
Big time.
See, Charlie has lived the life, a football life, and that's why we love to talk to him.
I think it's like sort of an all-star Airlines life. I mean, it's like we want to see that documentary about that company, and it's just
the life and death of All-Star Airlines. Charlie,
next year we took Trump Airlines, and they were out of business the year after that one too.
Well,
so.
connect the dots there as well. Charlie, thank you so much for giving us the fun insight on what is not always a fun time on the league calendar, but as always, you came and you conquered. Charlie Casserly.
Great to be with you, man.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Hello. This certainly isn't how I envisioned this or planned this, but I am going to retire. This is not an easy decision. Honestly, it's the hardest decision of my life, but it is the right decision for me. For the last 4 years or so, I've been in this cycle of injury, pain, rehab, and it's been unceasing and unrelenting, both in season, and off season, and I've felt stuck in it. And the only way I see out is to no longer play football. It's taken my joy of this game away. And this
This is an absolute bombshell that changes the complexion of the Colts, obviously, but the AFC and Wes, Luck. Nobody knew this was coming. Andrew Luck done at age 29 in the NFL.
When you're recording the show, 36 hours later, you're reacting to so much more than just the news. You're reacting to the reaction. You're reacting to what you should have seen for 3 years, considering the comments he's made. And just doing the research on what he said over the last few years, this is every bit as much of a mental health issue as a pain issue, as a physical issue. As Jim Irsay said in 2017, it's about the 4-inch field between Andrew Luck's ears. And Irsay took a lot of crap for that from people who didn't know what they were talking about and assumed they did from the outside looking in. But in Luck's own words, he is referred to the dark place, not a fun world to live in, scared to my core, a low point, miserable SOB. I withdrew. My life was empty. I have shame. I don't know about my worth as a human. I'm weathered and less naive. And then at the press conference, he said, this is the only way I see out of it. And out of it is the severe depression and identity crisis that he's been going through for 3 years.
And he said that already a weight had been lifted. And even though the press conference was obviously difficult, that the last week was difficult for him, he told Frank Reich and Irsay and Chris Ballard early in the week. So they knew this was coming. And I think if I'm a Colts fan, that makes me think that it's a little more final. You know, it wasn't something he woke up one day. It was really about a week and a half or almost 2-week process over when he really decided. And he knew when he went out and practiced before the last Colts game and looked pretty good, by the way, moved pretty well.
Had video footage of that.
And enjoyed it, that was probably going to be his last time. And that's why he took the moment to enjoy it. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but first it's just that the press conference alone was just impressive. I don't know. It was like a really unique sports moment. It was hard not to admire Andrew Luck watching that.
There was a very 2019 feel to the whole thing because the Colts are playing a preseason game against the Bears in their building. Luck's on the sideline, and his original plan is to tell his teammates after the game in the locker room that he'll be retiring. But during the game, Adam Schefter of ESPN breaks it on Twitter, which creates a whole weird situation. Both, if you watch the telecast, the announcers for the Colts team, they don't know what to do with that information. They show Luck down at the field. Obviously, he's smiling, seems to be in good spirits. The players, I guess, don't even know. And we'll get to the crowd reaction in a little bit. But Luck then comes out, and yes, I agree. He really was. It was clear that this wasn't a rash decision, even though it was something that he said didn't even cross his mind until the last week or two. He seemed, Mark, to be a guy that was at peace where he is.
I thought Peter King put it well that he noted, and Wes, you touched on this too with all the comments that he had made over the months and years, that for 42 of the past 47 months, Andrew Luck had either played or not played or rehabbed in varying intensities of pain. And how many people, commenting on this situation can speak to that in their own life? It's a totally different situation, and it starts as a physical thing. It becomes a mental thing. And if you look at the National Football League and, some of the reaction, and of course, he got booed at the stadium. Everyone is catching up in real time to their own emotions is what they're seeing. And suddenly you're watching your franchise quarterback off the field and leaving for good. And it's just completely surreal. But Andrew Luck was talked about by King as someone that when he first comprehended a couple weeks ago, even the idea of retirement versus, they mentioned IR boomerang or just let's wait and see, that when that concept came to his mind, that he started to grow comfort with that it became the way out. And no matter what privilege or job you've been given or situation in life that everyone else might want, if you're losing and dying and falling apart inside of it, you need to find a way out. And I think the NFL is, it is the tip of a needle on the tip of a needle in the human and earth experience. I mean, it has been around for a fraction of a second if you look at our universe and everything. This is someone who has the choice to do what he wants with the rest of his life. He mentioned his wife over and over. I think that is probably one person that sat with him through all of this in the different segments of their relationship to where they are now and knew where he was, and his family supported him. And anyone wanting to critique or this or that, it's kind of like this is a personal decision, has nothing to do with anyone else who's ever retired in the NFL before. It has nothing to do with anyone else who will retire. It has nothing to do with football at some point.
And it's crazy, though, because everything you say is really well said, and yet Luck even mentioned in the press conference, and Frank Reich certainly did, that Luck said many times last November, December, he's never had more fun playing the game of football, that it gave him a joy he never had before, that he thought coming to work in Frank Reich's offense, he shouldn't even be allowed to have that much fun.
Those were the 5 months out of the 47 when he wasn't in this game.
And, he played the Pro Bowl, and they kept mentioning that. And I think that goes to Wes's point to start, that it's more than just the physical. It was the accumulation of the years that came before that, and certainly the last 6 months now. And the reality of I know he is doing it for himself, and he said that, but I do think there's part of Andrew Luck that is thinking a little bit about the team too. What is the best thing for the team in the terms of how I feel right now? That I think the best thing for this team is for me to step away, to be decisive about it, not to have this whole thing, hanging over them.
Press conference was beautiful, but I just wanted to note the irony of a guy walking away, leaving his teammates 2 weeks before the season starts, and yet it was one of the most beautiful high water marks in team sports to see the love that he expressed and shares with his teammates, and that's what team sports is.
It is week 3 of the preseason. We hit several of the games on our Friday podcast. Why don't we just swing around the room for a few minutes here and throw out some big takeaways. I'll start off with one just because it connects with the Houston Texans, who are now they already were in a dogfight to win that division, but it changed a lot with Luck's disappearance now. The Texans lose their starting running back, Lamar Miller, to what is a torn ACL. So he blows out his knee on his first carry of a preseason game, and you see him carted off with the towel over his head. And, a lot of calls, Greg, a lot of calls out there that the preseason needs to be changed. And I don't know if that's necessarily the first thing that comes to a lot of people's minds, but I think one thing with Miller, and we're going to get into the ramifications of it for the Texans, but the one thing for me is the game is so fast and the guys are so strong that I do think they need to just lessen the number of preseason games. This stuff is just going to keep happening. The players have changed. The schedule, I think, has to reflect that at some point, hopefully after that CBA.
Yeah, I agree, and yet I just think if players are playing football, they're going to get hurt. So many players are going to get hurt week 1. Maybe not more than if they had played in the preseason, but a ton of them. So it's terrible when that happens too, and they'll probably reduce it down to 2 to 3 games. This is one of those injuries that you take away a guy who's played 1 million snaps and 1 million touches, and yet I don't really feel any different about the Texans. I think Duke Johnson is up for a 1A role in a backfield, and they probably need to go find who their 1B is. They have some rookies they like undrafted.
Signed Jay Ajayi, right?
We thought they did. Al Michaels reported they did.
Al Michaels did?
He said on the Sunday night telecast.
That's where I got my information.
They signed a Jay Ajayi.
And it didn't happen.
I thought so too. It has not happened yet. He's
Come on, Al.
unsigned. Maybe it will.
Clean it up, Al.
Or maybe they will sign someone. But if it's someone like that, I think that backfield will be fine. It's not where I'm worried about with the Texans.
What did they give up to the Browns?
Well, so it was a fourth that could max out at a third, and it sounds like they're going to get a third if he plays.
But you know what? Maybe they overpaid, but it's worth every dime or however you want to say it, because where would they be if they didn't have Duke Johnson on
Bill O'Brien,
chart?
the general manager / coach genius.
Name a worse offensive line backfield combination than the Houston Texans.
See, yeah, but the backfield to me is fine. I think
Why?
It can be average.
Because they have a third down back?
I think Duke Johnson, I've always believed this, has the ability to be a top. That's what every.
The Browns didn't think he had that ability.
Right, but the Dolphins didn't think Lamar Miller had that ability either, and no one thought he was a 3-down back before they got there. And I think he's a much better.
Making the leap.
I think he's a much. That's true. Dan did. Dan
What?
You believe in Lamar Miller?
I did a Lamar Miller.
Oh, you did one too.
I did a Duke
I'm
Johnson
saying I
making the
believe in
leap,
Duke
so
Johnson
someone's got to win
even
out here.
more that he can be a prime.
Wow, that's right. Duke and Lamar both
We've
making
had
the leap.
two
What a
Lamar
bummer.
Miller making the leaps and a Duke Johnson
I did
making
it
the leaps.
too.
Someone's got to get going.
I stand by Lamar. He's flashed, but he never really put it all together. That is what it is.
Their bigger problem is that another former Brown, Roderick Johnson, a fifth-round pick in 2017, is their starting left tackle, that their center looked terrible when they came back, that they had another injury on their offensive line. I mean, that's their problem.
Wes, give us a takeaway from week 3 of the preseason.
Well, I sort of looked at this like these teams are flashing at me right now, and I feel much better about them exiting August than I did entering August. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Minnesota Vikings, and Dallas Cowboys, even without Zeke Elliott. I don't know why nobody's talking about Michael Gallup, who looks like a transformed wide receiver to me. He looks phenomenal. The Vikings, Dalvin Cook looks like he's about to have a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type of season. That offense is perfect for him. And I love the Irv Smith pick. They just seem very confident. And the Steelers, everything they did this offseason seems to be working. Every single thing seems to be working. Everyone they signed from the CFL, the AAF, undrafted free agents, first-rounders, sixth-rounders, guys they picked off like late-wave free agency. Everybody's playing well for them.
Some of their old draft picks too, like Cameron Sutton and Artie Burns, that they say is playing better.
I mean, the one thing on the Vikings, let me ask you this, Wes, because I watched that game and I realized it's the preseason, but and Dalvin Cook looked fresh. He looked great. Their first 4 drives, 7 yards, 2 yards, -2 yards, 14 yards. Kirk Cousins started like 3 for 14. I know I'm not allowed to ever be concerned until September, but
you can do whatever you want.
He just looked a little off to me, though.
I mean, we've got 5 years of Kirk Cousins.
Regular NFL. We tend to agree on him, but 5 years of Kirk Cousins is an up and down journey.
He had 2 really, for what it's worth, for the preseason. He also looked very sharp.
I would say the same thing about
first 2 games.
The same thing about Marcus Mariota. Like, I would rather go back and study their regular season tape than look at 2.
Well, I would too. I'm not saying base it off of one game, but part of it is also your offense being in sync. And if we love the Cowboys and certain players and everyone looking in sync, it's like when a player looks bad, does that have any meaning or no meaning? I mean, I put some meaning.
It's a Rorschach text.
Depends on the context and the quarterback.
It's all about what you want to stand for and say matters, I guess.
Right.
Mark, how about you?
I'll tell you something I do think matters, because we just talked about a player who's exiting the league, and yes, the offensive line in Indianapolis was stellar last year, but half the reason Andrew Luck got into the situation he was in was because an offensive line that left him brutalized over and over and was unfixed for way too long due to the previous general manager. And I am very concerned, and this game feels like 70 years ago, but Friday night when I watched Baker Mayfield running for his life and trying to do everything to bounce off rushers, because Cleveland's left tackle, right guard, and right tackle should not be starting for anyone right now. And if you want to talk about all they've done this offseason, I would say this: if you're John Dorsey and you want to put the cherry on top versus trying to fix tires 2 weeks from now on the car that's broken down by the side of the road, you have got to find a way, and it's an impossible ask at this point, to get one of these, to get a Trent Williams, to get someone in there, because I would look at Gregg Williams right now, who gave up a ton of issue. He gave up pressures. He gave up sacks in that game. He had 2 penalties.
Gregg Robinson.
Gregg Robinson has always gotten these penalties, and they have Eric Kush starting at right guard, and they have got Chris Hubbard, old mother's son, we're starting at right tackle. I don't like any of it. It gives me a sense. I know some Browns fans are saying it's going to be fine. And you know what? Just turn me on in September. I shouldn't even be watching this stuff because apparently I'm too concerned about these things. But I have bad energy vibing off of that game.
The biggest thing that could go wrong for the Browns, you could say it about 31 other teams, is your star quarterback can't get hurt. And if you can't protect him, and he's a swashbuckler. He's like a kid out there. Yeah, it's a playground to him. But for real, like Mayfield is a guy. He's gonna be running around. He's gonna always keep his eyes up the field. He's always looking for the big play. And it is a dangerous kind of scenario the way he plays and the way that team blocks. So your fears are understood.
I mean, they had a flood of people not on the field. All the receivers, Nick Chubb wasn't there, Njoku, I get it. But that didn't change what I saw line versus line.
Well, you don't even need to watch the game to know that Dorsey is hugely disappointed with his worst draft pick that he's made since he's been there, Austin Corbett.
Yep.
The first pick of the second round. You trade away Kevin Zeitler because you feel like, here's one of my highest draft picks I've taken since I got to Cleveland. Let's plug him in. People watching the team on a day-to-day basis said he wouldn't make the team if they were just based on his actual play, and he's now getting replaced by a journeyman. So that's one slot where they kind of assumed he's going to take over for Zeitler, and that's one big trouble spot now.
How about you, Greg?
Oh, I mean, do we want to talk Daniel Jones, or was that Friday or Thursday?
We talked Daniel Jones on Thursday,
God.
Friday, I believe. Yes.
He looked good again.
I took.
Still looks good.
He still looks great. I take nothing out of that Case Keenum is announced the starter, other than as a Dwayne Haskins fan that I'm happy for it, because they open with the Eagles and they have the Bears week 3 on Monday Night Football.
Sure, that's their thinking too.
And I feel like if you're gonna throw Haskins out there, just wait till after that Bears game.
Totally with you on that. Will he be ready when he gets in, whenever he does?
Made some plays too.
Oh, that was awesome. If you want to check out Around the AFC, check out the Around the NFL podcast 3 times a week, including our Sunday flagship show. So get excited for that, and thank you to you, the viewer, and thank you to SiriusXM. Till next time.